Please be seated, everyone. Folks, I'll inquire whether anyone was exposed to any information, discussions, conversations, research, or inadvertent or intentional seeking out of information during the lunch break. I see no hands. Thanks very much. We'll continue. Attorney Brown.
The state calls Jill DeStefano. Jill, you can come with me. You're going to go with that gentleman right there.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I observe you're wearing two masks. My inquiry of every witness has been whether they feel they can safely and responsibly testify without wearing masks. I don't force anyone. It's up to you. Do you wish to remain masked, or do you want to testify without a mask?
I think given this distance, I'm comfortable taking it off.
All right. Thank you then. And I will ask you still to pull the microphone forward from the base so that it's nice
From the
and close.
base.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name and spell it for the jury here?
My name is Jill DeStefano, JILLDESTEFANO.
And Jill, whereabouts in the country do you live?
St. George, Utah.
And do you ever have occasion to visit this area of the country?
The first time I ever did was this summer.
And what brought you over to this area?
My daughter and her fiance live here
And whereabouts do they live?
in Sauk City.
Okay. And do they live in the city or out in a rural area?
It's rural. They kind of live in a weird spot on the edge of 3 counties.
Sure.
But I'd call it rural. Definitely for me, it's rural.
Okay. And is there any public land near where they live?
Yes.
And whereabouts is that in relation to their property?
They live 2 houses away from the river. Well, I guess there's woods before you get to the river. And across the street is a large open lot that is not public land, but at the time I first got here, I thought it was. It all looks like public land to me. It's all open.
Sure. And were you visiting this summer around July 3rd?
Yes.
And in that day, on July 3rd, in the morning between 8, 9 a.m., were you outside?
Yes.
And what were you doing outside that day?
Playing with my granddaughter. I'm raising my granddaughter, and she and I were running around out in the front yard. Well, actually, she was running. We were waiting for my daughter to come because we were going to go to the park.
Okay. And did you see anything that day that ultimately maybe you were asked about from the police in this investigation?
Yes.
What did you see?
I saw a man who was walking away from some cars parked at the end of the street. At the time, I didn't know the river was there. So he was parked facing the river in the woods, and he walked away from it, and then he walked back to his car. And mind you, I was watching my granddaughter. I noticed him, but I was watching her. And then I thought he was walking back to meet someone, and then he didn't. And he looked across the street from my daughter where there's a big open lot, which at the time I thought maybe he was looking for a hiking trail. And then I didn't see where he went after he went back to his car. I assume now the only place he could have gone would have been into the woods.
Okay. And what stuck out to you? Why did you remember this? Or was there anything odd that caused you to remember this?
Actually, no. At the time, I didn't think it was odd. I just thought it was a guy who was going hiking. And when I met my daughter later, it was my very first day in Wisconsin. I said, "Is there hiking trails around your house? It looked like there was a guy there going hiking." And she says, "No, people don't go hiking there. They go fishing usually down by the river." And so I at the time, I didn't even think it was odd. I just thought maybe there were some good hiking trails.
Sure. Do you know what the roads are around there, even called?
Yes, because I ended up staying for 2 months once I got here.
Sure. About what are the road names that are around that area?
My daughter lives on the corner of, I think it's Highway 188, and it's called Jensen Road, but it's also called Old Highway 60, depending on which county you're in.
Okay.
And then it's right, the next street over is the new Highway 60, I assume it's new.
Got it. This man that you saw, if you give us a general physical description of him.
He was about somewhere in his early to mid-20s to maybe early 30s. Not real tall, maybe 5'10"-ish, I'd say. Either dark hair or a dark hat, I'm not 100% sure. And he was wearing a backpack. and some pants. I can't remember if they were jeans or khakis, but it looked like he was going hiking.
Did you catch and were you able to observe what his race was?
He was white. Well, I assume he was white based on his skin color.
Okay. 1 second. You mentioned he was coming from some cars. Do you know what car he was coming from or what the cars were?
I know there were 2 or 3 cars parked there because they hadn't been when I arrived the night before. One of them was a Subaru. I know that because I had just sold my Subaru. And I don't know and one of them was dark. And I don't know for sure which car he was coming from or to. He was just around them.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon. It's not unusual to see cars parked in that area, correct?
I wouldn't know. That was my very first day there.
You spent 2 months there?
Afterwards, there were days when there were no cars, and there were days when there were 2 or 3 cars, yes.
So it's not unusual that there were cars parked there?
Based on what I saw this summer, I would say so. Say it's not unusual, yes. Sorry, that wasn't clear.
This person you saw, you didn't recognize them as someone you knew, correct?
No,
And you didn't recognize them in any way other than the brief description you just gave, correct?
correct.
That's it, thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
May this witness be excused and released from her subpoena.
She is both excused and released from her subpoena.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of your day.
I'll recall Brian Shunk to the stand. Thank you.
Pardon? No. I'll remind you that you're still sworn from the oath you swore this morning.
Good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
I think you've testified previously that you are one of the 2 lead case detectives along with Detective Sims, who's sitting with us at council table, correct?
Correct.
And as part of being a lead case detective in this case, you've been aware of various locations that have been discussed in this case where remains have been found?
Yes.
I have the computer open.
Yesterday, the jury heard from Kat, who displayed a map, a screenshot of a Snapchat map to everyone. When you saw that, were you aware of where that location was?
Yes, I was.
And just now, Miss DeStefano, I think I got it right, the court reporter nodded. When she testified, are you aware of that location that she's describing?
I am.
Are you very familiar with that area?
I am.
How so?
I used to work patrol for the sheriff's office, and that was one of my areas of responsibility. So I would frequently be in that area. The town of Roxbury was part of my beat. I would, patrol Highway 188, Jensen Road, or Old Highway 60, as some would call it. It is one of the most northwesternmost parts of the county. Once you were to drive past that on 188, you would leave our county. So it was kind of a common turnaround if you were in that area.
Sure. And that location that Kat had the map of, you're aware drone footage was later taken of that area?
Yes.
And is that Exhibit 55?
Yes, it is.
The city we see across the river on the top right corner of Exhibit 55, what city is that?
Prairie du Sac is across the river.
And I'm showing you what's been marked in this case as Exhibit number 121, 122. Are those aerial photographs of this area?
Yes.
And showing you what's been marked as Exhibit number 123 and 124. What are these?
Those are pictures of Chandler Halderson.
In the course of your investigation, were witnesses who had previously been in contact with Mr. Halderson talked to you about any photographs they might have of him?
Yes.
And did a witness provide some photographs of him shirtless, kind of by a tree?
Yes, 2 photos.
And did that witness take those photographs, or did she just have them because Mr. Halderson gave them to her?
She just had those photos.
Okay. I'll move 122, 120, or excuse me, 121, 122, 123, and 124.
Any objection?
None.
They are received.
I'll move to publish.
You may.
And then, Judge, if you want to turn on HDMI left. And just briefly, this is 532 that we looked at yesterday, the map that Kat was able to provide to law enforcement.
Yes.
And then 121, what are we looking at there?
This is going to be a drone photograph of the Highway 60 bridge. Jensen Road, or Old Highway 60, would be directly beneath the drone here. So this is a picture facing north.
Okay. 122, what are we looking at there?
Similar, it's a drone photograph taken. Jensen Road would be directly beneath, or approximately directly beneath the drone. We're facing to the west. This is going to be Prairie du Sac in the background.
Okay.
Wisconsin River, obviously, in the photograph also.
Okay. 123, is this one of those photographs of Mr. Halderson that you were able to obtain from someone?
Yes,
And I guess I'll ask, are you knowledgeable of who the photographer was?
I am not.
You yourself had opportunities to see Mr. Halderson in person, correct?
Correct.
Including in that several hour-long interview we just watched?
Yes,
And does that appear to you to be Chandler Halderson?
definitely.
And then 124, just a different type of picture?
Yes.
You're aware, ultimately, that some items were discovered on that public land that's right there?
I am aware.
What town is that in?
The town of Roxbury,
Now, is the town of Roxbury a town that has police station, post office, things like that?
it does not. It's a very remote area.
Is that location in Dane County, Wisconsin?
Yes, it is.
And it is in fact the location that you've seen on drone footage and you are aware of in this investigation where any human remains were found, is that location in Dane County, Wisconsin?
Yes, it is.
Nothing further at this time?
Cross-examination?
Detective, those photographs of Mr. Halderson came from an ex-girlfriend
Correct.
who contacted your agency?
I forget how contact was made, whether she contacted us or we contacted her. I don't recall.
So part of the investigation was certainly contacting people who know or knew of Mr.
Correct.
Halderson, correct?
Yes.
Nothing else, thank you.
Any redirect?
No.
Detective, you may return back to council table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Brown or Raymond?
State would next call Warden Ryan Caputo.
Good afternoon, sir. If you believe you can do so safely and responsibly, testifying without your mask would be our preference, but you're not forced to. That will be up to you.
Okay, I'll leave it on, thank you.
Very good. Please proceed.
All right. Good afternoon. Could you please state your name, spelling both your first and last for the record?
Ryan Caputo, RyanCaputo,
How are you employed?
with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources
With-
as a conservation warden.
As a conservation warden. And is that a sworn member of law enforcement?
Yes,
I'm going to ask you to pull that mic just a little bit closer.
Okay.
There's
Is this
water
better?
and fans, yes.
okay.
And in mid-July, July 14th to be exact, of 2021, were you working in your capacity as a DNR warden?
Yes.
And on that day, what was your assigned tasks or duties?
To help out the Dane County Sheriff's Office with searching a piece of state property for any evidence associated with the Halderson case.
Okay. And how did that search go about? How many coworkers were with you and what was the plan?
As far as how many people were there, I don't remember. There were 3 other wardens that were there, and the plan was just to divide it up into 3 different parcels essentially and search those thoroughly, and I searched the southernmost area.
And how do you search those areas thoroughly?
By walking through them and trying to stay as close as possible to each other to make sure that you're not missing anything that might be between each other.
Okay. Just what is that area? How would you describe it to somebody who had never been there?
Yeah, it's part of the Lower Wisconsin Riverway, so it's just wildlife area, a lot of trees, some open grassland type of stuff, and it leads up to the river. Pretty thick with weeds that time of year, in July. A lot of smartweed, pretty thick area overall.
Is it open to the public, private, or something else?
It's public land and is open to the public.
Okay. What sort of things do people use that land for if they visit it, if you know?
A lot of times it's hiking or going over to the river to go fishing, maybe even sightseeing, seeing bald eagles and so on. And then, any other use somebody could think of for it, I guess.
Okay. And then the winter, there's snowmobile trails in that area?
Yep, there's a snowmobile trail that runs through it.
Okay. And what town is it located near?
Well, it's located, I guess, in the town of Roxbury for the most part. I mean, there's a lot of different sections of it, but the biggest city would be Sauk City or Prairie du Sac.
Okay. And the search took place on July 14th?
Yes.
I'm going to have you look over. There's a large photograph there. Is that part of the area that you searched?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to do this a little bit differently today. In order for the jury to see more detail on the photos, we're actually going to hand everyone out a copy. I will go over the exhibits though first, and I'm going to present one of these pamphlets to you to make sure that the exhibits are what is in this booklet.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yes.
I'm going to present you with exhibits 125 through 131. Just as a group, in one sentence, not individually, how would you describe exhibits 125 through 131? You can look through them. That's perfectly fine.
So you want me just to describe it as a group, as to just...
Yep. What are those photos of?
This is just a representation of the area that we searched as well as what we found.
Okay. And that on the July 14th, 2021 search.
Correct.
And do those appear to be true and accurate photos of that, what you saw that day?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, I would move exhibit 125 through, you got these all out of order for me, 131.
No objection.
No objection. They are received into
Now,
evidence.
let's put them in order.
There you go.
Okay. Now what I need you to do is, I'm giving you one of these booklets. I want you to just compare and make sure that the 125 here is what is 125 in the booklet.
To the best of my knowledge, it is, yes.
Okay, and let's continue on.
Same thing for 126. 127 looks to be correct. 128 looks to be correct. 129 looks to be correct. 130 looks to be correct. And 131 looks to be correct.
Okay. At this time, Your Honor, I would ask to distribute booklets containing exhibits 125 through 131 to each member of the jury.
Folks, we are doing this, or I should say the state is doing this in a slightly different procedure than other exhibits. And obviously, as you may gather, similarly to the presentation yesterday, I think the state intends to demonstrate a step-by-step look of the discovery, culminating in what was discovered, which of course becomes the most or more sensitive or disturbing of the photos. You'll have these in front of you instead of on the screen. The same admonition that I gave yesterday applies today. You have to be able to have said you saw it, but whether you then look away, close the booklet, look at the picture, examine, that's solely up to your discretion as a juror. I will only say this, don't turn ahead. And if you are going to engage in a closing of the booklet and then reopening to the next page, just make sure your hand stays in the proper place so that you know that I have to turn one more page and that you're not stumbling or going ahead, because I believe the state does want to present these to you in the order prepared in the booklet. You won't be keeping the booklets, they'll be returned when we're finished with this exhibit, but we're anticipating that this is an alternate method of showing things to you that we're going to attempt at this time. Go right ahead.
Yes, should allow for more detail observation. The exhibit number is in the lower right-hand corner. If you would take one and pass them on.
Whenever you're ready, counsel. Or were you going to take full? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If I look up, I'll actually see that we're still distributing. Thanks. Go right ahead.
All right. Warden, I would ask that you look at Exhibit 125, and could you explain to the jury what picture 125 is of?
The picture 125 is an aerial photo of, on the center of it, you can see where the body parts are located that myself and Kevin Gruber, who were part of the search party, what we located. The larger group of it, there's still another piece of human remains that were found that would be, if you're looking at the picture, if you look above it, you see a gap, it would be to the right of that, somewhere in that area. But this is the largest grouping, that red spot that you see.
Okay. And at this point, what did you think that red area was? Did you know when you first began?
Yes, when I approached it, I saw toes and a foot and part of a leg and so on, so I knew I had found human remains at that point.
Okay. Let's turn the page to Exhibit 126. Could you please describe for the jury what 126 displays?
Same thing as I had described before.
So again, the search area,
Correct, the search area, what we had located, and maybe a little bit of better definition, a different angle for sure. And this obviously just a little bit shortly after we had located the parts.
and let's flip the page to page 127. What area in Exhibit 127 is the remains, or how would you describe it?
Where you see the person wearing blue at the bottom of the photograph, kind of towards the center of it. If you go up on the page, you see a green tree, and then above that, you see, I'd say it looks red in the photograph. You can see an outline, or you can see a human leg in there.
And let's flip to page 128. How would you describe Exhibit 128?
What I had found for human remains.
Okay, just a closer up view.
Correct.
And at this point, did you think it was one leg, two legs, or something else?
I didn't stick around long enough to figure it out,
Sure. And why was that?
because it's gross.
Fair enough. You called the medical examiner
Correct.
and
I
others.
had notified the sheriff's office what I had located, and it's theirs to take over from that point.
Sure. Exhibit 129, is that just a further zoomed in view?
Correct.
Turning to Exhibit 130, is that the general area of the location?
Yeah, it looks to be A lot of the riverway down there looks very similar to that, but you can see kind of out in the waterway, you can see that piece of sand out there. That's very consistent with that portion of the riverway. There's an island out there.
All right. And then flipping finally to Exhibit 131. We have a picture of a singular tree. Now, in the background of Exhibit 131, there's a white tent. What is the white tent?
The white tent is where the human remains were located.
Okay. And now I'm going to, at some point during this investigation where you showed pictures of a young man hanging from a tree,
I at least remember him being next to the tree, I think with his foot up next to it, yes.
okay, fair enough. I'm going to show you what we've previously seen as Exhibits 123 and 124. Are one or both of those the pictures that you were shown in the course of this investigation of this tree?
Picture 123 is, yes. I do not recall 124.
Okay, fair enough. So picture 123, the one leg up. And in looking around that area, did you recognize this location?
Yeah, it appeared to be closer to the river from where we had been located at, where we had found the human remains.
Okay. And you found a tree that at least looked consistent with the tree pictured in Exhibit 123?
Yes, I was a forestry major at UW-Stevens Point, so I've been around trees a little bit, and I was able to look at the photograph and figure out it was an elm tree, or at least appeared to be an elm tree. And then there's a dot or a knob on the bottom of the tree that's very consistent with the photograph that you just showed me there.
Okay. Warden, I just have one or two basic questions about, that white tent area, the place where the human remains were found, how far away is it from that tree? Roughly.
Roughly, I'd say approximately 100, maybe 120 yards.
Okay. Does the DNR have a dive team?
No,
Does the DNR ever have civilians participate in searches in the water and in a diving capacity?
I don't know.
Okay. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, Warden. I heard you use the word consistent when describing the tree in the photograph with the man and the tree that you found on the banks of the Wisconsin River. Is that right?
Yes,
So it's fair to assume that your testimony isn't that it is absolutely the same tree. Your testimony is that it's consistent.
it looks to be the same tree to me.
But you used the word consistent, correct?
If that's what you're saying, then I probably did, yes.
You don't know for certain that that's the same tree.
I can't say for certain that it's the same tree, but it looks to me like it is the same tree.
Now, can you say that that photograph was taken very close in time to when you saw the tree?
Which photograph are you talking about?
The photograph of the young man that you compared to the trees in the area.
I don't know when that photograph was taken. I think I had been told maybe it was like a year before, but I don't recall for sure.
So your information as to when that photograph was taken comes from what you were told, not in your tree analysis skills, correct?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. The tree that you found that's consistent to the tree in the photograph, you don't know whether that photograph was taken the same year as you found that tree or a different year that you found the tree based on what you were able to observe on the tree that you found, correct?
Correct. Their trees don't have dates on them. I would not be able to see exactly when the picture was to everything else. So, yeah, no.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused and released?
He may. And would you like me to collect the exhibits?
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Should I collect the exhibits?
I think we should, yes, go ahead, counsel. If you can pass the booklets back down, counsel will collect those. Thank you. Yeah, we'll keep them there for now. We won't get them confused with exhibits. For the moment.
All right, the state calls Kevin Gruber to the stand. Can you switch back?
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
If you're able to do so safely and responsibly, preferably we could testify without our mask if you were comfortable with that.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name and spell both your first and last name for the record?
Kevin Gruber, Kevin Gruber.
How are you employed?
I work full-time for the city of Middleton as a paramedic, and I work part-time for the Dane County Sheriff's Office Tactical Response Team as a medic for them.
Okay. And were you working in your capacity as part of the tactical response team as a medic on July 14th of 2021?
Yes, I believe that's the date.
Okay. And on that day, did you participate in a search near the Roxbury area?
Yes.
How would you describe that search? How many coworkers were out there, and what were you guys tasked with?
So the entire team was tasked that day with a search of that wooded area. There's roughly 30 people on our team with the other medics and the rest of the sheriff's deputies. And that morning there were some additional personnel too. I don't know if there were other sheriff's deputies from other counties, but there was some DNR wardens there as well to help with that search.
And I mean, how did this search occur? Did you guys walk arm in arm, spread out, something different?
So in the morning, everybody that was involved that day kind of gathered in that area, and then we were briefed on what we were going to be doing that day, and they kind of instructed us to break down into some smaller groups or teams, and then methodically search this wooded area that they wanted us to look for any sort of evidence that could pertain to this case.
And you described it as a wooded area. So trees, was the grass short, high, something else?
Yeah, there's lots of trees. It's right off of the Wisconsin River, so there's plenty of water around too, little pockets of ponds and stuff like that. I don't think the grass was really too long that day, but plenty wooded, yes.
And I'm about to approach you, and I'm going to show you exhibits 132 through 138. Because these are kind of detailed photos, we're going to end up giving the jury these little booklets. So I'm not only going to ask you to describe the photos, I'm going to ask you to tell me whether or not the photos in these booklets are the same as these photos. So if you just want to look briefly and maybe give one sentence as a group as to what 132 through 138 describe.
So there are photos of what we found that day when we were doing our woods searching.
Okay, and do they appear to be true and accurate depictions of what you observed that day?
That is what I observed that day, yes.
I would move exhibits 132 through 138 into evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are received.
All right, now I will move the pictures, but I'd like you to compare the picture. Is 132 that I'm showing you the same as 132 in the booklet?
It is.
And I have them backwards. 133, the same?
It is.
134,
Yes.
135,
Yes.
136,
Yes.
137,
Yes.
and finally 138.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I will let you have these, and I will pass out exhibits for the jury. Okay, you don't need to do that. Okay, counsel has one. I'll give one to the judge. And
Naturally, folks, the same
we will
advisement and
do
admonition
half here, and
applies
I'll
to
start
these
half in the
exhibits.
back up here. Everybody get one? All right. So, Mr. Gruber, could you please describe Exhibit 132 to the jury?
This is a picture of the grassy wooded area, the area that we were searching that day along the Wisconsin River.
Okay. And why don't we move on to Exhibit 133? What are we looking at here?
This looks like the area where we found the stuff in the pictures. It's maybe like the first part of where we initially found the stuff in the pictures.
And did you first see what you found, smell it, or something else?
My first indication in the area was the smell.
Okay. Let's turn to Exhibit 134. How would you describe Exhibit 134?
This is just a kind of a different view of, there was almost a little separation between the two different places where we found the stuff that we were looking for.
All right. Exhibit 135.
So this is a closer up picture of the first item that we found that was in that area that day.
Okay. And turn the page to 136.
And this is a close-up picture of the kind of the second items that we found that day searching that wooded area.
And what was the distance, if any, between what you found in Exhibit 135 and Exhibit 136?
A rough estimate of maybe 30 yards.
Okay. All right, let's turn to 137. Is that the same thing that we were looking at in Exhibit 135?
Correct.
And again, 138, just a different view.
Correct.
What did you do once you and your team had found these parts?
So we were, as we're searching the wooded areas, we're spread out to cover more ground, but, within sight of each other and making sure that we're, doing the methodical search. Once we encountered these and decided that it was not, that it was maybe something of interest, then I immediately called our team commander and alerted him that there was something here that the detectives should probably come take a look at. So then we kind of just stopped so we didn't disturb the area anymore and had more people come down to take over.
And were you part of the team that marked the area with flags or no?
I don't remember whose idea that was, but there was kind of this path along the wooded area that was easier to get in and out of instead of walking around. So we did kind of, a couple of us put some flags in to mark an area that we all came in at the same point.
And is that an attempt to disrupt the scene as little as possible?
That was our thoughts, yeah.
Okay. And how would you describe what you found?
Initially, there was, the smell of it, and then as we got closer, we'll use picture 137. That morning when we were told to go search, we weren't given specifics as to what we were searching for, just anything of interest. It being a wooded area it was not immediately apparent what that would have been, a smaller piece. So that's when another member that was out searching kind of went closer. And at first we couldn't quite determine what that piece was because it was separated from the picture in, it was like 30 yards, I said, from 136. We didn't see that first. We saw first in the 137. So it wasn't immediately apparent what it was until we found the other piece that was more apparent as to what that would be.
And what do you believe it was?
Body parts. Looks like a foot and a leg.
Okay. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused and released from his subpoena?
Yes and yes.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll take the exhibits.
Thank you.
And we'll collect the booklets at this time, folks.
State's final witness for today is Deputy Jim Plenty.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Good morning, sir. If you're able to safely and responsibly testify without a mask, that would be our preference if you're comfortable doing so. Thank you.
And Deputy, this is the first time you're testifying in this trial, right?
Correct.
But not the last.
Correct.
Okay, so I would ask you to state both your first and last name for the record and spell both.
James Plenty, James, Plenty, Plenty.
How are you employed?
Employed with the Dane County Sheriff's Office as a deputy sheriff.
And were you employed as such on July 14th of 2021?
Correct.
And on that day, were you assigned to a search or to assist with the search in the Roxbury area in Dane County?
Correct.
And at some point, some body parts are found. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. How would you describe what was found?
On this DNR property in the township of Roxbury, it was discovered that there was, in one location, 3 items that were all in the exact same location, probably touching each other. One appeared to be a right leg from the foot all the way up to near where the hip socket would be on that leg. The other 2, one was a left foot that was severed just above the ankle, and the other item, I wasn't able to identify what it was, but later was identified as being the upper thigh.
And were you part of the process of collecting these remains that were found on that DNR land?
I was present, and I had taken photo documentation of those items as that happened.
Can you describe the process? How were they collected?
The medical examiner's office had completed the collection of them. It was an individual from the ME's office, an investigator, along with Dr. Rogalska, that had done the collection. The items were collected and placed into a body bag and then sealed.
Okay. And then somebody from your department remained with those remains until they were arrived at the ME's office?
I had stayed on scene to continue to document, so
All right, fair enough.
I wasn't part of that.
But
So,
generally, that's the practice, is that somebody from your department maintains and goes to the ME's office.
I'm not sure if we would do that all the time.
Okay, all right.
But it would be sealed, and ME's office would have custody of remains from any type of scene.
Absolutely, along with the crime scene unit that would have gone and documented the
Sure.
scene. And you were part of that crime scene unit of taking photos in this case?
Correct.
Okay. Nothing further.
Cross-examination.
No, thank you.
May this witness be excused for today.
You may approach.
Yes, I understand you. Can I let him go?
Yeah, just a minute, yes.
Pardon?
Yes.
I understand you are still under subpoena, but you're excused for today, sir. Thank you very much. Well, Attorney Raymond mentioned final witness, and I'm not going to make her a liar to you. We're going to have one more piece of information or evidence submitted to you at this time. And again, it is through stipulation of the parties. As I told you a day or two ago, when the attorneys and/or defendant agree to certain facts and stipulate to the same, these are provided to you, and you must take these as being true. So in this case, the district attorney and defendant's attorney have stipulated to the following. The human remains consisting of a male torso located at the Earlywine Road property on July 8, 2021, is Bart Halderson. The DNA sample taken from the torso by the Dane County Medical Examiner and transported to the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, labeled as item B, is a true and accurate standard of Bart Halderson's blood and DNA. Item 3, the human remains consisting of 2 female legs located on the town of Roxbury, Wisconsin River property on July 14, 2021, is Krista Halderson. The DNA sample taken from the legs by the Dane County Medical Examiner and transported to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab, labeled as item K1, small letter A, as well as the toothbrush head labeled as item 1, capital letter I1, are true and accurate standards of Krista Halderson's DNA. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, we are going to be adjourning for the weekend. I come from a fairly large family, and we always do our Christmas celebration the weekend or two after Christmas, so nobody has to be out of their homes. And when we get together, we can have upwards of 40 people. I'm not going. I'm not going because I can't expose myself to that many people from different places and be true to your obligation to us here to try and do your best to remain safe and healthy during this period of time. So obviously, I'm not telling you what to do with the time you're away from here, but keep that in the back of your mind and do stay healthy and take every step that you can to remain healthy. At the same time, as I've said every evening, rest. As I've said as well, place everything out of your mind and do not think about, discuss, investigate, research, or inadvertently become exposed to any media source, news, print, television, electronic, or discussions with others about this case. You have been incredible during this week, and I appreciate so much your time. I believe that counsel tells me that from the state's perspective in presenting its case in chief, we are on track, and I appreciate their efforts in that as well. There's a lot to do next week, so do get a good rest, and do please take the best care you can of yourselves, and don't take any steps or allow anything to happen to you, either as far as your health or as far as your knowledge and understanding of this case. Just be well, and we'll see you so that we can start at 8:45 on Monday. And I hope for warmer weather. Thank you.